I feel safe with you because of your background and your training. I'm comfortable with opening up to you and your audience. And the biggest reason being, obviously, is thinking about those people that are currently victims in relationships that are going through this, that have no one to bounce off. They yet haven't spoken to anybody. And this is a really great, creative, positive, informative way for them to get some skills behind them to perhaps start talking about it and start choosing the people they might want to speak to that are close in their circles. Because I was petrified, absolutely petrified. My skill to survive my journey was to not tell anybody.
Welcome, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast, coming to you from the Podvlog studio in St. George, Utah, and produced by Markel Consulting, LLC. I'm your host, Dave Markel. Welcome back to Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. This is episode 25, and if you've been one of my loyal listeners, you've heard me say what an honor it is to have some truly incredible guests on this show. Well, today, again, I feel that same honor and privilege, and in fact, excitement to bring this episode to you. Today marks my first episode with a male survivor, so it's awesome to have you as a listener to this particular episode. Today, you will hear the painful and appalling story of rape and sexual assault from Julian Jones. But don't tune this episode out. Julian is a strong and brave survivor who actually sought me out to tell me that his story is about overcoming the pain of relationship rape and sexual assault and the rejection he experienced from our societal rape culture. I want to warn you, Julian's story is graphic, explicit, and detailed. It's not for children, so please use extreme discretion in paying attention to who is within hearing distance of this episode while you listen. But also keep in mind that Julian is proud to tell his story because it speaks to his courage, strength, and recovery process and the healing that he's experienced over the past several years. I'm honored that he chose to use the SAS platform to share his story and help bring justice to victims and survivors. Julian told me that he has listened to every episode of this show and that he wanted to be a part of the survivor family of sexual assault survivor stories. So I'm proud to present Julian's story. And I know that everyone who receives this episode with understanding, empathy, and compassion will have a greater understanding of what this podcast is all about, providing a voice to victims and survivors, ridding our society of rape culture, and providing justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. Thank you for tuning in. Here's Julian. Julian Jones, thank you so much for joining me and being my first male survivor episode. This is exciting to me, and I can't thank you enough for your willingness to be here.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. And you can thank your guests because they gave me the courage and you gave me the courage to speak up. I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm okay.
Just chill because, well, you're from this industry, I take it. You said something about being live on TV. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, I was in the 90s. I was just doing like instituals on this community television station. And I worked as a hair and makeup artist in the major networks throughout Australia, all the major networks.
Wow.
And so I was doing these instituals with a friend. She asked me to help her. Instituals are like little commercial breaks telling you what's coming up next.
Oh, okay.
So I was doing that. And then some producers invited me into a meeting and said, come and chat with us about helping out on this new TV show. So I sat in the meeting and they said they want celebrity guests and all these things to happen. And did I like the name at the end of the meeting? And I said, oh, what was the name? And they said, Julian Jones Live. And I was like, huh. So I was working with one of the biggest Australian Tonight shows already as a makeup artist, hair and makeup artist. And so it was kind of like surreal because I was crewing crew on one and now I'm going to be hosting my own. So I just said yes. Heart attacks galore, but I said yes and just did it. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think. I mean,
Mhm.
that's pretty cool.
It was pretty crazy. It was really good. It was great for my self-esteem. It was great for my, I don't know, just understanding myself. Being live TV, you don't have time to think about what you're going to do. You're doing it. So it's very similar to what we're doing today. I feel safe with you because of your background and your training. I'm comfortable with opening up to you and your audience. And the biggest reason being, obviously, is thinking about those people that are currently victims in relationships that are going through this, that have no one to bounce off. They yet haven't spoken to anybody. And this is a really great, creative, positive, informative way for them to get some skills behind them to perhaps start talking about it and start choosing the people they might want to speak to that are close in their circles. Because I was petrified, absolutely petrified. My skill to survive my journey was to not tell anybody. They knew that there was something going on, and I would say there were difficulties, but I never shared with them what it was. I was in such deep denial as well at times, or I put myself into denial. I am a trained crisis counsellor. I worked for Lifeline here in Australia, and they're on call 24/7, 7 days a week here in Australia. So I was well and truly equipped to deal with trauma, crisis. And my perpetrator was challenged every single day, sometimes for hours and hours on end, just for me to get into survival mode and defending myself. Neighbours would hear, friends would hear, family definitely knew, but I was in such deep denial, and I didn't really get the right help. I sought help, but I didn't get the right help until 2019. I was a mess by then. I was crying and didn't understand. I didn't even get diagnosed with PTSD until 2019. And this all happened to me late 90s into the 2000s. So, and I put it down to that was why I was so emotionally upset, but I didn't understand what it was that I had. I'd been diagnosed with depression, but not PTSD, because I hadn't told anybody.
Right.
Not until 2019, really. For me, the most important question, and probably one of the most important questions I think that's been asked of me, and I think that every single first responder could ask victims, possible victims, was, were you ever in pain during sex? And that actual question opens up a Pandora of scenes in my mind, which I hadn't yet learned how to articulate. I still didn't understand that I had been I would say I was sexually abused in my mind, yeah, but not sexually assaulted. And one of your guests, Carolyn, really the way, oh my goodness me, the way Carolyn articulates her journey, I think that's so important, that she was so openly vulnerable with us, was like singing to my heart while I was processing my own things. And she also triggered a lot in me, but she was so determined not to have let that get the better of her. You could hear it in the way she musically describes her survival techniques.
And Julian, that is so rare for even people who've told their story and have acknowledged that they themselves are victims and now survivors don't usually get as open. Yeah. That's courage, I think.
Clarity as well. In the face of so many people trapped right now, it's the very least I could do.
We were just talking about Caroline being clear and brave. And when I encounter people like you who have been through such horrendous pain, painful sex and denial and trauma, when people finally come out and talk about that, I have so much admiration for the strength and the courage and the fortitude that you have to do this.
Thank you so much. You too, I'm listening to you and I'm feeling the same. I'm on a walk. I'm freaking out and I hear you and your gorgeous, vulnerable guests speaking so freely. And it's like, it's literally down the pipeline, mate. It's straight into the heart, straight into the soul, and empowering these muscles to keep going because I didn't want to stop listening. So I would walk further and do my workouts, listening to these women and yourself share your stories, empowered me physically. And all your other girls, Hayley and Arci, is that right?
Arci Grey.
Yeah, Arci
Arci.
Grey. Oh, look, all of them.
Thank you. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
so happy for that. Sad for the experience and sorry that you went through all that, but happy that you're willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
How did you find the podcast?
I got so tired of hitting brick walls with the help that's here for men in Australia. There's really not much. There's one meeting on Thursday nights, but you're not allowed to miss one. And I'm a contract worker. So if I miss one day of contract, I miss 10 days of work. You know, I'm financially struggling since that occurred to me.
Yeah.
Gosh, I could go on so many tangents. I'll try and stay. What was the question?
How you found Sexual Assault Survivor Stories podcast to begin with? Yeah,
so I was searching for male help, male support groups, even mixed support groups, but there was just nothing. And I was met with so much aggression if I ever spoke about it. And that's really hard, that heartbreaking, to be honest. So I was doing my own podcast. And I wanted to do podcasts on sexual assault and survivors and talk to police and also talk to celebrities and artists within our business to try and quite normalize it in our conversations.
Absolutely.
Rather than just only home in on that. And hats off to you that you've done that. But every time I've done that here in Australia, I've got into trouble. It created something in me to create something of my own type, more colourful, less all about trauma, just to kind of like try and invite in new ears, perhaps, people that wouldn't be listening to a sexual assault survivor podcast. So I started searching and I listened to a few and I was like, and then yours came up and your soft voice, strong but soft voice. It was a compassionate voice. You were already listening. You were already believing in the way you projected yourself. And then I heard you engaging with these young girls and older girls and middle-aged girls, and I could hear the variety and the diversity of what had occurred to these lovely women that have survived. And I thought, no, this guy's on the money. I was always hoping one day that I would be able to speak to an officer that was removed from the force about this in more detail. And here you are. So there you go.
It's a blessing. I was just about to say the same thing. It's a blessing to hear you say those things. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Just having the courage as a male to say, yes, I was victimized sexually.
Yes.
Takes such courage. It's, as you know, and we'll talk about this, it's scary because you don't know what the outcome will be.
Yeah.
And it puts a different light on who you are to them, which is one of the reasons, especially males, but females and transgenders, everyone, no matter what your gender is, it's one of the reasons people don't talk about sexual abuse is because they don't know how they'll be received afterwards.
Oh, yeah. And most of my encounters with talking about it has been met with hostility. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
so sorry.
You know, it's okay. I think it's really important to say that, though, because, you know, it was what made me search for you, because I was getting so tired of these comments, and I wrote some down for you. If that's okay, I can share them.
I would love that.
Sure. I told one friend, and she was like, if I end up anything like you, I will never report my rapes my husband did to me, because you talk so openly about it, and I never want to be that person. And she was quite aggressive when she said it. And I was like, okay, but you are a friend of mine, and I don't just tell everybody these details, only you. And I thought that you were ready and able to listen, but it turns out her ears were bleeding and she was sick of it. But I didn't hear it until much later, sharing with her. So that was really hurtful. You knew was one thing that a very close person said to me. So it's your fault you knew, and you went back. Specifically, once this person lived with me, and it was the first time I'd ever been, I will say, sexually assaulted, raped. I was in the bedroom for probably 7 or 8 hours, quite unusual, having sex. not wanting to continue having this sex. And I found excuses to leave the room. And this person was waiting outside the bedroom and said, "What is going on in there?" And I said, "Something I don't really want happening, and I'm about to shut it down." So I went and got a drink of water and went back into the bedroom and said, "Get your clothes on, we're going out, and this is finished." So we left and went out and saw that person, and that person, my flatmate at the time, didn't even communicate anything when the perpetrator was in the room with both of us. Then recently that perpetrator said to me, I said, what is your lack of empathy? Why do you always minimalize anything I say about my sexual assault? And they were like, "Because you went back into that bedroom that day." And I said, "Yeah, I made it clear to you though, and you were there. I went back into that bedroom to shut it down, and we both came out and sat with you, and you didn't say anything. And not only did you not say anything to him or to me with him in present, you also didn't say anything to the police. You didn't say anything to the police during my interviews with police, and you didn't say anything to the police then." And that's a prominent person in my life still. So, those kind of hurtful, frightening things that you hear from people that care for you. Another one was, "I'm sick of it. I'm sick of hearing about it. I'm sick of it. I'm definitely sick of it." So this is one reason why I'm doing what I'm doing with you today, is I'm so sick of it. I want to change it within my body and my soul and those around me. And I want to empower it, and I want to move forward. And it's a part of me. It's never, ever, ever going to go away.
Right.
So I want to change it and make something of it. And I want that to be organic. I don't want to start a non-profit organisation and climb that tree and try and get heaps of money. I'd rather sit with somebody specialised like yourself and nut things out.
More power to you. Thank you. And you will, in my experience and my belief and my research, you will experience some amazing healing from this.
I know.
Because it is so empowering to do what you're doing. It's hard. It's not anything you can sugarcoat and say, well, from here on out, it's going to get easier, because it doesn't necessarily get easier. Like every guest I've talked to has said, there are good days and there are bad days. There are days when I can handle this and what happened to me and handle what it means to talk about it. And there are
100%.
other days that it just knocks me on my butt and I can't move.
Yeah.
I want to stay in touch with both those sides of you and encourage you all through this. I am here with you. I am here for you, because you're here for me and you're here for my listeners. And that means the world to all of us who are hearing this.
You betcha.
Let's go back, if we may, and tell me what you're able to tell me about your sexual assault experience.
Sure. I think probably the most frightening thing for me, and the day that really had me know that my life was in danger and that I had to make a change and leave everything and just go, was I was at work. I drove to work. I was working on a very reputable music program here in Australia, going to air live, making up some of the best musicians we've ever created. And my eyes start rolling back in my head. And I knew that somebody had spiked my drink. So I assumed somebody had spiked my drink at work, because we were in a bar filming this live experience. And I was working on two musicians that were like, wow, gods to me, because I trained in gospel singing and they were powerful gospel singers. So I'm in my element, but my eyes are rolling back in my head. And I thought, am I that nervous? And it got worse, and I'm doing eyeliner and my hand is shaking, and I'm near their eye and they're backing off, and "Are you on drugs?" And I said, no, but I think I'm either having a heart attack or someone has spiked my drink. And she aggressively said, no, you're on drugs. And I said, I don't think so. I haven't taken any drugs. I know I'm not on drugs, but I'm either having a heart attack or someone spiked my drink. I better pack up and go. I think I need an ambulance. They said, yeah, pack up and go. Nobody rang an ambulance. Nobody called the police. My God, I wish they had. They would have saved me so much. They would have changed my world if they'd done that. That's probably the saddest, hardest day of that entirety. I knew I couldn't drive home, so I had to leave my car and get in a cab, and my eyes are rolling back in my head, and the cab drivers, I can see him looking back at me. He must think I'm off my face, and I still didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Got home, chucked my stuff out the cab. I contacted my partner. I knew that he was home. He just got home from China. We had a business in China that I helped fund through my work. I'm messaging him saying, you need to meet me out front. We've got to go to hospital. I think someone has spiked my drink. Get out of the car. He helps me grab my stuff out of the car, chucking it on the front doorstep and then jumping in the car. And as he's ducking his head down, looks over the roof at me and he says, I can't take you to hospital because I spiked your drink. And my entire world, I was freaking out. I wanted to ring the police. He's now in charge and we're inside the house and I'm off my guts, shaking, and I want to ring the police, and I don't ring the police because I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in 2 multinational companies with this guy. So have my friends. Some of my friends have invested their whole life savings into our businesses. I'm challenged in this moment. I really want to ring the police and I don't. You know, I've told police this story and they asked me if I was raped during or after this time, and I said no. And I'll tell you why. And this is where Carolyn's being so specific about her hurting is so crucial that we have these conversations, because I've had professional chats before, but it was, as I said to you, it wasn't until 2019 I'm sitting in front of a domestic violence case manager. And she asked me 5 questions first, like, you know, have you ever been sexually assaulted by your partner? Have you ever been raped by your partner? I'm like, no, I mean, a bit of sexual violence or maybe sex unwanted, but I did it anyway, you know. And then she gets to question 5 and says, have you ever experienced pain during sex? And I went, oh, yeah, all the time. And she's like, what? And I said, yeah, all the time. And she goes, can you describe that pain? And I said, my penis was burning all the time. And we just keep going and kept going. Sometimes for 72 hours. And I don't know how, but I'm pretty sure. I know that he was putting drugs in my drink. I caught him a few times, but particularly that time, me going to work. Sometimes I couldn't tell you how, what, where, or when. I just know that it was from Thursday or Friday night till Sunday night, and I'm crying. Where's my weekend gone? What's going on? What about my business? I mean, I'm working with the most famous people in Australia, and I'm face to face with them, hand to mouth, shaking, and them thinking I'm a drug addict. And me, how do I tell these people I'm now a drug user, but I don't want to be?
Yeah.
And I am. Yeah. So it's really important, because I didn't believe, or I told myself that because I wasn't violently raped up the backside, that I wasn't raped. I didn't really compute. I remember one thought really, really early in my relationship, that he was touching my penis and it hurt so much, like there was a hole in it from friction, right? And he kept going over it and around. I'm going, you can't touch that, man. You just can't touch it. Like, I need a break. And he kept going and kept trying. And this went on for like 12 hours of him trying to touch it. And I'm thinking to myself, is this rape? Like, I've asked him not to like 572 times. And this happens so often that I couldn't understand why I kept going and would try for him. And it was coercion. It was, your sex isn't good enough. You're never good enough. You need to try harder. Your intimacy is appalling. All these comment. And some of them I took on board, but some I'd fight back and go, hang on, no one else has ever told me this before. And I'm 28 years old, and I've had some pretty positive experiences with men, pretty positive experiences with women, and they've all been loving and caring and fantastic. And there's this one crappy one, and you're telling me my sex is shit. So he bought me a book on intimacy anyway. Yeah, quite insulting. But, I read part of it and just put it down and went, yeah, the reason why I don't want to have sex with you is because I don't want to have sex with you. And we went to therapy and we talked it out. And he would always say, never tell them about the drugs or the longevity of our sex in the session. And that's the only way I'll go with you to therapy, is if you never say that.
Wow.
So I thought that was kind of my leeway into getting help. At the end of the relationship, I told that therapist really what happened. She didn't really do anything with that information. She didn't guide me in the right direction. That's why I was saying it's really important. I think it's probably the most important question for police to ask survivors or victims. Have you ever experienced pain during sex? I mean, it opens up my whole world. It opens up my denial. It opens up the secrets. I'm scared even telling you now what he would do to me. I mean, I do get threats through other people. He doesn't know I've been to the police. He may now.
Julian, I certainly don't want you to think that I'm going to put anything on this episode that you don't want other people to hear. Anything after you talk to me about your experience that you would say, in retrospect, Dave, please edit that part out. I will honor that. It's hard to do what you're doing, even if this isn't for a podcast, even if we're just mates talking, It's hard to talk about.
Yeah. But Dave, it lacks in our communication as a society. We're not talking about it. We're not allowed to talk about it. Like, I know I'm not allowed to talk about it at work. That's been made very clear. Even though we're observing, they knew me very, very well, and they were observing changes in me. They were noticing bags under my eyes and physically unwell and very tired at work, and notably questioning those things, but instantly calling me a drug addict.
Yeah.
And they were just so very wrong, because reluctantly taking these things. Sometimes they were crunched on my teeth and pushed down my throat. The only thing you can do in that moment is gag it up, and you won't get all of it anyway. Right. So other times it was put in, if we were drinking just with friends at a party, I know things were put in my drink because my body would change. I get tingling and things like that. And I would have more energy to have great sex. But that great sex, to me, was great for an hour, but 2 hours are gone, 3 hours are gone, 4 hours are gone, 5 hours are gone, a day had gone. I'm still lying. Now I'm unconscious on a mattress. So afraid to tell anyone.
Julian, what you're talking about is, as we've said, so important for people to hear.
Yeah.
Because so many people won't talk about it.
Yeah.
And I know you've had many years now to reflect and to suffer through some really horrific memories.
Yeah.
I, of course, because of my law enforcement experience, but also my experience in being mentored by and taught by some amazing neuroscientists and psychologists, and who I take my hat off to for spending as much time with me as they did.
Amazing people, so necessary in this topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it always makes me wonder, when I talk to victims and survivors, what is your understanding from your perspective of why it is that so many people react hostily and push back and say they're tired of hearing it and don't tell me anymore, or don't talk about this? And society as a whole, worldwide, but you said even in Australia, it's just not talked about. What's your understanding of the why behind that?
So I think for protecting myself and being very realistic about the discussions you're having with people is that, one, maybe they're a victim and they are confronted by your conversation. Maybe they've never spoken about theirs. But we really do have this culture in Australia, and I'm sure you have it in America, and I know it's everywhere else, is that, Aussies are tough. Yeah, get on with it, mate. Like, come on. One woman that actually worked with male perpetrators was having a conversation with me once about her own personal family violence. And then I said to her, look, I accidentally brought it up at work. I had this stage where I was a bit Tourette's-y with it. Mm. So if people were talking about family violence at work, I'd splurt out, I've been raped. And everyone would just turn and look at me, and people would go and dob on you, go and tell people that you're talking about rape at work. And it's like, but hang on, you guys were all just talking about sexual assault and rape, or your partner was stalking you or drugged you. Or I really wanted to tell that story because they're the things we have to deal with. I heard in one of your previous podcasts that we lose up to $1 million income as survivors.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely I did. I mean, I lost my house and I ended up with $50,000 debt at the end of my sexual assault. And so by law in Australia, when we broke up, we weren't even recognised as legal partnership sexually as husband and husband. So when I went to court, they went, too bad, mate. You can only go to court over your business relationship. and you've only been earning this much money as a makeup artist, and you worked for free in the last 12 months of your career with him as a CEO for your new company. Really, it shows they only went off 12 months, and that whole 12 months I'd worked for free for us. And the other 5.5 years, I'd paid for everything. And they only went on by law the last year. So this carries with you. You can't get rid of it. You have to survive. And you're having people talk to you like you're a piece of poo along the way. Yeah. So hence my story about talking about the pool and work, all these things you have to deal with and not be a whinger. Because I do get that, stop your whinging, don't whine. It's like, I'm really not whinging or whining. I'm just talking about something that happened today that I chose not to do. It was forced on me. So look, there's some darker moments or some harder moments in my life. I listen to your podcast guests, and there's so many positive things that come out of being a survivor, and that is your ear changes. The things that you hear and see, you can actually step in and help people better because you understand, you can see in their face, you can see in their eyes. I had to go to the best support group for me at the time was Al-Anon. Al-Anon is American born, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah. So Al-Anon is, for those that don't understand, it's a support group for partners of alcoholics, partners of drug addicts. So I did go to them for about 4 years. And in going to those, I learned a lot about and putting yourself first and self-care and all these wonderful things and bound of teammanship, love, care, and believability. And those that would actually support you. And support is, to me, the most vital word as a survivor, because you can have people might help you or people don't help you. But when people actually support you in what they say to you, what they do for you, makes the difference every single day.
Yeah.
I love you. You make me laugh so hard. I have one girlfriend that says to me, I wee my pants when I speak to you. You're so funny. I love you. Nothing can take that away from me. Every time I see your face or think of you, I start laughing because we laugh so hard together. And she's a beautiful, strong, incredible, creative leader herself in my business. And a funny girl, but she knows she lost a brother, a hole caved in on her brother and he died. So she understands pain and trauma and confrontation. And she understands the importance of having people that love you and want to laugh with you and care for your dark side, but love your light side.
Mm-hmm.
I like your dark side and the authenticity that comes with that, but I love your humor and I love your light side too. I mean, we're full of color, every one of us.
Yeah.
But if you're mean to us, we get worse. If you are cruel to us, it hurts so hard. And we have to recover from that statement or that day because of the mean things that you have said to us, because you don't understand and you talk to me like you are a rapist yourself. They're the sort of comments I can't tolerate anymore.
Julian, before you admitted to yourself that you were a victim,
yeah,
you probably had a view of what it meant to be a victim.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that dichotomy between before you admitted to yourself that you're a victim and what you saw victims as?
Yeah, it was a really big difference, to be honest, because, and I didn't understand this in therapy, and my therapist helped me understand it. I was in such denial for so long, and that really helped me through. But it only helps you through for so long until you feel like you're bound by straps to some rafters in the roof and you're thinking, what's going on? And so it was really quite easy to soften it and keep it lighthearted, and nothing really happened. It was just a crap relationship. And I eased my way through the difficult dark times and so confused still. But that easement made it. Carolyn was talking about your body work, your brain was looking after you in such wonderful ways. And my brain was looking after me in such wonderful ways. It excused a lot of things and it made it easier to move through those things, but only to a certain point. I was still a victim. I really only became a survivor probably in 2022 in my mind and body and like the lining myself up. where you would meditate and understand why you were doing that. You know, it was the fullness of doing that, not just doing it, but I can feel the difference and I understand why this is making a difference in my life. Just do it. It's great. Even if it means me turning off the TV and sitting in silence with my dogs, feeling them, cuddling them, massaging them, you know, in that quiet space where I can hear our kookaburras and cockatoos are two animals you don't have. But they're quite beautiful, and our magpies, they're quite beautiful in the wilderness where I am. Yeah, so then when I realised I was actually a survivor and not a victim, is when I decided I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to talk to celebrities, and I'm going to talk to cops, police. I'm going to talk to teachers. I'm going to talk to students. I'm going to talk to whoever, but also engage and bring in all these celebs that I know that are fantastic people, all great leaders. But the ones that constantly engaged with me through my trauma, they don't even know how amazing they were. They don't even know that that's why I'm inviting them on as a guest. You know this now. I've just invited them on. But, you know, I've said at the first podcast or two, there's a method to my madness, and I will announce it. I'm happy to announce it with you here now. But I will announce it on my own podcast later and go, you know, these celebrities that I had on weren't just celebrities, but they were people that looked me in the face of trauma. They supported me. They loved me. They made me laugh. They felt me. Some of them would even grab me and say, you could see they knew something was going on. One woman grabbed me. We were at a radio station. She was live on air. She went to a break, grabbed me, and she went, Julian Jones, I fucking love you. I just love you. You're a very special human being. Go home to your dogs. I'll see you soon. Love you very much. I mean, who takes the time to say that? She still does not know what was going on. But she was one of the girls that I would see at a particular show that we filmed on Mondays. And so I'd been 72 hours assaulted and went to her, and I'm making her up, and she's that loving to me, and I'm recovering. I'm too vague, and my penis is killing me, and my body aches, and I'm getting through 2 live records of a TV show, and I'm barely surviving. And I can see people judging me going, look at that drug addict over there. And I'm like, you know, and I'll admit to you, one of the hardest moments of my career, a new gay boy was becoming quite famous. He's a comedian, and a really great comedian, quite a good looking young man, really funny, and he's doing extremely well here in Australia. But he sat in my chair after I'd been assaulted for 72 hours. I was so exhausted, and I'd just been to a whole lot of auditions to host a TV show, and they asked me to be camper, be gay, be gayer, be gayer. And I'm like, no, I'm going to be just me. And they went, if you be gayer, you've got the gig. And I went, no, I don't want to. So this guy was a bit gayer, and he was really handsome, and he was really funny, and he was a great host. So I knew he would be the next big gay celebrity here in Australia. But I'd just been raped, and I was so exhausted. I didn't even talk. I said hello to him, and I didn't even talk to him. And I wanted to say to him, please help me. This is going on at home, and I'm really struggling, and I don't know who to talk to. But you're so young, and how are you going to help me? And you're a host. You know what it's like. You work in the biz. I couldn't say a word to him. So when he sees me now, he took great offense to that. And when he sees me now, he just turns his nose up at me and walks off. And I think, God, if only you knew what was happening to me 8 hours before.
Yeah.
And these are things I can't grab him now and say, hey, the reason I didn't talk to you was because I was so exhausted and I'd just been raped. People think you're mad if you say that stuff. They think you're crazy. I told a lawyer once that I needed to seek extra help, and I told her everything we've spoken about, and I told her that he drugged me, and she rolled her eyes at me, put her pen down, looked at me patronizingly and said, there's nothing I can do for you here. And she was at legal aid, so a free legal service representing people that are in hardship, and that's how she treated me. And the actual lawyer that I did end up speaking to after I told her everything, now one of the reasons why I couldn't leave, and it got me deeper in trouble, was my partner gave me hepatitis A, and he told me at the end of our relationship that he did that on purpose to immobile me because I was ready to leave and I was prepping to leave. So he gave me hepatitis A, which is healable. It's not for life, yeah. So I'm vomiting for 3.5 months. I couldn't work. So I became more relied on him even more. And I had to go to the bank and get a loan to pay for our new business and me being sick. I told a lawyer this, and I told her everything else. And as I'm leaving the lawyer, she walks me out to the car park and she goes, you know, if everything you say to me is true, I just wonder about this hepatitis A thing, because you can't even get hepatitis A. You need to get hepatitis A through blood. And I just looked at her and I said, you realize you can get hepatitis A through a crack in a mug? It's not hep C, you know. And she went, yeah, blood. And I went, oh, so you're calling me a liar now? I said, I don't know if I can work with someone that doesn't believe me, honey. Like, you need to check your facts, and we need to have another conversation after this, because hepatitis A is transferable through saliva. And what you're talking about is hep C and hep B, which is blood.
Mm-hmm.
And she then went and put her junior onto me. Her junior took over my case from there on.
Wow. I want to talk about the enlightenment that you have come to, also your retrospect and your views of where you were before that enlightenment. And you touched on it just a minute ago, but my question is, in your assessment of your situation, what prevented you from leaving?
Threats. You know, I was given hepatitis to immobilize me. I ended up getting carpal tunnel as well in my arms and hands. So I couldn't work for about 3.5 months because of that. So we're already accumulating 7 months of no work. And me then getting a loan. We've started an international business. Somebody internally robs us of $40,000. A new partner that had been assigned that I didn't approve of. And the list goes on and on and on and on. And
no, I'm aware of these dynamics.
Yeah.
See, that's where my experience as a police officer and detective, and then as an instructor to others who are investigating these cases, I wanted to become as educated and as informed as I possibly could, so that I'm dispensing best practices in how to investigate these cases. And it's crucial for whoever's doing the investigating and first responders to understand the dynamics of interpersonal violence and what it feels like to be traumatized and abused and assaulted day in and day out, yet not having the ability to leave. And because when you're new at this, that's one of the first questions that everybody asks. Well, why didn't you just leave? And there are so many dynamics behind why people don't leave. And I know what they are. And I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for those people who are stuck, who are asking themselves, why aren't I leaving? Why don't I get out of here? But yet they know the answer. Help us understand, Julian, what that was for you to not be able to leave.
So I got a couple of invitations to leave from my friends, but they were also, I don't think they were aware at the time, but they were also in domestic violent relationships with young children. And I couldn't jump from the frying pan into the fire. So those opportunities were a no. So I asked my mum if I could live with her, and her partner quickly made the spare room an office for them. One person offered me to live with them, to be their gardener, to pay my way. And they didn't last very long either. They broke up. I think every situation that looked like a possibility frightened me. It wasn't better. It wasn't healthier. I actually felt like I was a little bit more knowing what was going on around everybody and myself than most people were of me, if that makes sense. I was watching and listening and learning and drinking things up. But then I couldn't say much because I worked with all these celebrities and I couldn't be being raped and drugged. I couldn't rely on them. I didn't really want to end up living with work people. So I went to counsellors to try and work out how to get out of here. And I went to one woman. I saw a sign on the street in a town called St Kilda, and it had family violence or something. And I remember that week, I went to an Al-Anon meeting at the back of that hall once. I thought, I'm going to drop in there. And I dropped in there and I said, look, this is really urgent. I need to see somebody today. I need a therapist. I need a counsellor. Help. I'm being drugged. I need help. Please, somebody sit and talk with me. And she went, give me a minute. I'll sort something out. 5 minutes later, she sat me in a room and I tried to ask for help and I told her what was going on and she went white and she looked like she was about to throw up. And she goes, your case is so complex. I can't deal with this. I can't manage it. I'm not capable of managing you. You need to ring AIDS Victoria and they can help you. And I said, well, I don't have AIDS. And she said, yeah, but they're the only gay place around that can offer you any free service. And I went, okay. So I left the building deflated. I rang AIDS Victoria and they said, mate, have you got AIDS? And I said, no. And they said, sorry, nothing we can do for you. You've got to go to your doctor. And so I tried, mate. I tried and tried. I tried and I tried. I fought and I fought and I fought and I tried to get, I even bought my own house as an escape route and he took it. He got it. He knew that that was my escape route and he did everything in his power. And when he got it, he sprinkled my dad's ashes on the mural I built for my father. And he messaged me and said, I've put your father's ashes on your memorial you built for your father out of quartz. Your father's ashes are now there. He did say, we've saved some for you, but you have to come and get them. And I said to him, I'm not coming to get them. I'll send a relative to get them. Please give me the details. And I've got 3 relatives that have already put their hand up to come and get them. But I never heard anything back. Never heard anything back from him to get the remainder of the ashes. He loved that. He got my house, 2-story home on 20 acres, the getaway dream for me. And he got it and buried my dad there. So look, I did everything to try and outsmart myself. I did everything to try and outsmart him. I reached out to professionals and no one believed me. No one even cared sometimes, like I was losing my mind. So I had to go on, I'd just been diagnosed with PTSD. And the doctor said to me, well, you've got CPTSD because it's so complex. There's so many layers to your trauma. I'm like, great, bring it on. Give me the medication. I need the change. And I willingly and happily took them because I wanted the change. And they did make a difference in my life, thank goodness. But they said you need to go on the dole here, which is community pay, from our local government if you're not working, because I was struggling to go to work.
Yeah.
And they said, but you've got to go in and see a counsellor first and tell her your story and tell her why you can't work at the moment. And they'll look at putting you on a thing called NDIS. And I said, okay, so that's like disability payments every single year and you don't have to go to work. I'm thinking, thank God I can take a year or 2 off and relax and produce my own stuff from home and make that grow. And I'm talking to her and she's looking more and more disgusted as I'm telling her in detail what had happened to me and why I'm trying to get help. And she's nearly vomiting and she's gone white and she's like shaking her head and like she wouldn't look me in the eye. Anyway, so she signs me off and I get 3 months of $500 a fortnight to pay my mortgage and my food and my bills. And this is the best money I've got in 20 years. And, other than the money I've gone out and earned, but the best help that I've got in 20 years, right? And then so I'm due to go back in there 3 months later and I walk into her office and she wouldn't look me in the eye and she goes, first of all, I want to say to you, I don't want to hear one thing about your partner making you piss in a bucket in the corner of the room or in a bottle. I don't want to hear it. And I said, aren't you the counsellor? And she goes, I'm not a counsellor. I'm just here to tick the boxes. I don't need to hear what happened to you. Like, I don't want to hear that disgusting conversation. And I'm like, whoa. I said to her, I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to say that. But I was under the assumption and your staff had told me that you were the counsellor. And she goes, I'm not a counsellor. And I went, well, it would have been great for you to introduce yourself as not being the counsellor, because I certainly wouldn't have shared things like I had to wee in a bucket in the corner of a room with you. I'm so sorry. But rude people, mate, just so mean to me. And it's like, I've just told you my penis is like bleeding and then I'm pissing in a bucket because I wasn't allowed to leave the room, because he's scared I would have a shower and sometimes I would have a shower and run away or go and see a relative or hide. And, so I got banned from leaving the room. I got banned from having showers for 3 days. I would have rashes under my arm and all around my penis. Yeah, go to work recovering from that. It was so shit.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. There's plenty of us, I'm out of there now. Those visions don't go away, but they become less and less prominent in my life. But if someone wants to have an intimate relationship with me, you don't think those moments flash in front of my head like, don't touch me.
Yeah,
People
absolutely.
can hug me, people can touch my arm, and people can put their arm on my shoulder. But as soon as somebody says, hey, do you want to? I'm like, I really think I need to trust somebody really thoroughly and feel compassion and love for them before I would ever let them see my body or touch it.
It's good to hear that you're taking care of yourself. What are you able to tell us now about what it means to be a survivor and what you're doing to survive every day?
Yeah. So I live on a farm. I've got a small farm, but the farms around me are huge. And so the neighbours are really quite beautiful, quite friendly. Some of them even know what's gone on in my past because I had to explain why I'm not so social with them, but I didn't want them to think I was strange. So I explained it and said, you're welcome to knock on my door where I'll definitely come over for a drink, but I don't like loud parties and alcohol and drugs. It freaks me out, because that's when I was preyed on the most in those circumstances. So I don't really do them. COVID was great for me because I was like, I don't have to explain anything to anyone. I can just live the way I love to live. It was fantastic. But anyway, look, you can't always live like that. So to find the medium in that reclusiveness, that did happen for a while. I just set small tasks for myself, like make sure you go on 3 trips today in your car. Go supermarket shopping for healthy food. Come home and cook it. Do a workout on your gym. As I was saying to you earlier, my kind neighbour, her husband died, and she started giving me all these amazing gifts. They were such a beautiful couple, and he would always wave to me from the other side of the fence. And she gave me his gymnasium, which is a full gym. And so I have a great relationship with that gym.
That's great. That's great.
And I have 5 dogs. So I got qualified in dog behavioralism. Nice. And I really wanted my dog experience to be, so they're English staffies, so they're really quite high energy dogs and can be very dangerous. So if I was going to have that many dogs, I went and got qualifications in dog psychology.
That's great.
And that helped me with human relations too.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of PTSD training with dogs, and that's a fascinating topic. So my dogs really help enabling me to continue to love something deeply and allow affection back, always in the habit of feeling love.
Nice.
And the other thing I do is obviously walk with them and meditate. And I take on really big jobs where I have to go away for 2 weeks and look after lots of cast and deal with lots of corporate people. And mostly I succeed, sometimes I fail. E.g., hey, we know your ex. Yeah. And there's no excuses. People don't excuse that behavior. I've got to be really careful not to slip up at work.
And that's a complete ignorance and denial of the human psyche and what the trauma response of the brain is.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the trauma response is to freeze.
Yeah.
Tonic immobility, collapsed immobility, all of those dissociation, escaping from the reality of the situation in order to survive.
Totally.
There's such a big misunderstanding, which is a big reason for this podcast, is to have people like you talk about this and what it means to be a victim and what it means to be a survivor and what it means to make that transition from victim to survivor and how difficult it is to be that survivor every day, because it's so easy to just regress and fall back, right? Yeah. It's hard to stay motivated to be a survivor and to push forward, right? I love your example of get in your car 3 times a day, go somewhere, do something. Don't be a hermit. Don't isolate. Don't stay in your shell. Do something that makes you interact with people not necessarily having to tell your story to everyone, but to just realize that you can have a somewhat normal relationship with others that isn't abusive, and to draw on that and to communicate with those who do know what happened and who are compassionate, who do understand maybe not all the intricacies of the neuroscience of trauma and maybe not all the intricacies of being trauma informed, but understanding enough to be compassionate and empathetic and caring and not re-traumatize someone through ignorant comments, uninformed comments.
Or ignorant comments are okay, but with aggression is like, that's kind of like a double whammy.
Yeah. The reason I bring this up and the reason I wanted you to talk about these dynamics is so that those who are victims and still stuck in those situations, who haven't had the opportunity yet to get out of it, can see that there are people like you who felt the same exact way, who were in that place, but who survived it and did get out of it eventually and made that admission to themselves that it was time to do something. So thank you for that.
A big message to people that are in it right now. We love you and we believe you and we're here for you, and you will get through it. And take the chance to tell somebody, a doctor, a police officer, whoever you trust, you feel safe. Listen to these podcasts and inform yourself and get yourself leave ready. Set up a plan, escape, remove yourself from the situation.
When it's safe to do so. And to have that plan, like you just said, make yourself ready. Put things in place that are ready for you to make that move so that you've got those resources financially, emotional support, environmentally, somewhere to go that you know you will be safe. Because leaving is, as you know, one of the most dangerous times.
Really scary. But you can do it, and as you said, if you supply yourself informed to the right people, for starters, at least if something rocky happens on your exit, the right people know what's going on. They're your backup. They're your part of your spinal cord when leaving. But as you said, safe housing. You can go to your local community service centre or police, as we discussed, or your doctor, and you can ask them about setting up some accommodation for yourself because you're in a family violence relationship and you need to prepare some accommodation for yourself. It's there. It's available.
We have to do this again.
Right?
There's, as you said, there's so much more we need to talk about. I want to hear about your experience of talking to the police. I want to talk to you more about what that feels like and what it means to talk to both police who are trauma informed and those who are not, those who are compassionate and understand these dynamics and those who do not, and how to separate yourself from not only police, but the general population of our society that do not believe and do not understand what it means for victims of interpersonal violence, sexual assault, domestic violence, rape. There's so much knowledge that you have that you can share. And I do want to have you talk to me again for this podcast.
100%, mate. No worries at all. Love talking to you. We'll talk again. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
That does it for another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. I want to express my sincere gratitude and admiration to Julian Jones for his time in allowing me to interview him, and for his strength and courage in telling his story and helping bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. I truly am looking forward to the next time that I have the privilege of talking with Julian as we further explore his healing journey and discuss important and timely elements to fighting our rape culture and furthering justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. Thank you for listening to Sexual Assault Survivor Stories. Your loyalty and tuning in each week means more than I can say. Please tell your family and friends about this podcast and help further the impact of this podcast by clicking on the subscribe or follow buttons for this show on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to do your part to help bring justice to victims and survivors of rape and sexual assault. And remember that the best way to do this is to start by believing. We'll see you next week.